everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. It seems like every other tour or every tour, we as a fan base acknowledge that the band is getting older and how lucky we are to still have the opportunity to see them. While that is undoubtedly true, we don't always take the time to recognize that we as a fan base are also the ones getting older. As a result, our lifestyles, our habits, and our needs change. One of those needs, if we're lucky enough, is how to handle our money for the future. Today's guest, Ted Kanakaris, is here to help us do just that. Ted is the founder and financial advisor for Sandpiper Wealth, a financial planning firm dedicated to helping the Phish community manage their finances. If you couldn't tell, he's also a huge fan. Ted and I talk about how the traditional world of money management was a major turnoff for him, and how the changing demographics of the Phish community helped him realize that he wanted to help the community in a way that most of us probably didn't think about 15 years ago. We also talk about beer. Ted is a member of the Gotta Brew Club, a group of fans with some familiar names you're sure to recognize, who get together to visit different breweries, and were lucky enough to collaborate with one of the best breweries on the East Coast, but I'll let Ted tell that story in just a few minutes. Finally, there's Ted's musical pick for Attendance Bias. Phish's version of 2001 from December 29th, 1998 at Madison Square Garden. Played in the heart of one of the best shows of that year, Ted explains how the funk cover is a, quote, flashpoint. I love that he used that word. A flashpoint for the band's evolving musical style in the late 90s as they drifted away from funk and then approached their trademark ambience toward the end of the century. As you could tell, it's a packed episode. So let's join Ted to talk about TD Bank, Ballantine Ale, and glowworms as we discuss 2001 from December 29th, 1998 at Madison Square Garden. Ted, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me. I'm psyched.
I'm psyched too. You brought a lot to the table today. We have a lot to talk about, not only musically, but you personally. We got wealth management to talk about today. Number one list on every Phish fan's interest. We got 2001 from one of my favorite shows ever, December 29th, 1998. And
Same
everyone's
here.
favorite topic, beer.
Yes. In that order.
But let's start.
Absolutely.
Let's start in one way. You are a financial advisor by trade. You found a company called Sandpiper Wealth LLC, Sandpiper Wealth Management. And when you first reached out to me with different services, businesses that you market to the Phish fan base, obviously Sandpiper is inspired by two great Phish songs. But when I think of like the Phish economy, at least the fan economy, I'm thinking dollar waters, $2 Gatorades.
Waters. How the hell? How can we afford these tickets? Yeah, totally.
Right. Tickets, hotel rooms, stuff like that. So when I think of wealth management, I think of kind of boring commercials during football games.
Yes,
Where
absolutely.
did you be able to slip in between Phish fandom, wealth management? How do those two things merge for you?
They don't. It's really out of the box, admittedly, and it happened in reverse. It didn't happen by plan. It's more of a celebration of community and a celebration of this like lifelong journey that we've all been part of. I think it's important to step back. I'll give you my life story as fast as I can. But I actually started out in creative work. I worked in the music industry. I worked in the film industry for a bit. I sold pianos for quite a bit. And in 2009, when we went through the financial crisis, the piano business went out of business temporarily, and I was out of a job. And so at the time, my wife, or my fiance at the time, worked for an investment bank. I had family that was in wealth management. A bunch of our friends were financial people. And I just kind of made this blind decision to go in that direction because it felt like the thing to do. It was a flashpoint in my life where I kind of put aside creativity and creative people to then work in a world of numbers and compliance. So after doing that for 13 years, I got to a point where I really missed creative work and creative people. And I was in a point to kind of take some time to reflect, started playing music again, read some books by this guy, Seth Godin. To summarize, talks about finding your tribe, being true to yourself, serving people who you genuinely care about, being unique in the way that you communicate. And so I just decided to figure out how to play music again. I was at the Sphere for the Sunday show, right, the 21st. Very lucky to be out there. And I go out right before they close out the first set. They're in the middle of character zero, and I just run out because I want to go to the bathroom and grab a beer. Like I'm one of those guys, right?
Character
So
Zero
I
is
do
kind of made for that. No offense to
exactly.
anyone who loves it,
I've
but
heard,
you know what you're missing if you're missing anything.
yeah, exactly. But I go to one of the high top tables there, and this group of girls walk out. There's like glowing, there's this aura around them. You know, everybody's having a great time, and they walk up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're saving a table for us." I'm like, "Of course I am." You know, just get into conversation, and this girl Erica York, entrepreneur in Denver. You know, it's like, "What do you do? What do you do?" We have that whole conversation, and she says, "You know what? You should do what you do, but you should do it for the Phish community. There's a lot of us. We're older now. We have needs. Our parents are getting older. That's what I do." And I was like, huh, that sounds a lot like Seth Godin. So I went back and in a couple weeks just kind of said, bye guys, I'm going to start my own thing. It was out of the box. It was definitely not accepted in the world of suits and golf. People literally made fun of me. You know, there was a lot of like, what are you doing? People literally said things like, these are your clients, not your friends. And a lot of gaslighting, right? In the world of financial services, it's very sales driven and cold calling, targeting people because you think that they're a good sales opportunity, right? I was done with that, and I was gonna just be myself, not play golf, but I play the piano. So started playing Phish songs on Instagram to connect with people in creative ways. Started meeting people. At first, felt very uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, am I having a midlife crisis? Right? Maybe my colleagues are right. This is weird. I changed my LinkedIn banner, I remember, to red circles, right? You know, Fishman's dress, right? And I started looking at Phish professional networking groups on LinkedIn. Of course, they exist. We're very happy to announce our fandom, right? And when I started doing so, this girl Erin McGaughy reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I saw your banner. Awesome." So immediately, like she's a very important person to me, right? She's kind of like my Phish angel. But I immediately realized that this world of cold calling and targeting people doesn't exist when you kind of align yourself with a community that you deeply care about and that you've been a part of for, almost 30 years now.
Well, how is it? I wanted to ask you about that, the whole community aspect of it, because, like you said, the image, right? The image that I have in my head when the phrase wealth management or financial advisor comes up, I'm stuck sometimes in the late 90s, early 2000s. We're 25 years past where I should be mentally in the present. But I see these TD Bank commercials with couples in their 40s or 50s being like, well, we just need to know how to plan for our future. And then a guy in a suit across a
Yeah.
desk for them saying, the future's going to be here before you know it. What are your dreams? And it's like this very cheesy setup. Fish
Yes.
fans generally, I hope, don't typically operate or even communicate like that. At least
Nope.
I don't,
I
and
don't
and
either.
and when I sold my house a number of years ago, all of a sudden I realized, oh, I have to be that cheesy couple up on the TV screen. I need someone to help me figure out what to do with this money. Not that I'm like, lavishly rich or anything, but
Mhm.
it's more than I know what to do with. And so I found people, and I was recommended to someone by my cousin, and she turned out to be a big widespread panic fan. She's from
Great.
Georgia. And when we started talking, once that kind of broke the ice, it was like, oh, now we're talking as people. I mean, I'm your
Yes.
client, right? And you're my money person, but at the same time, I can mention things like, what are you doing this summer? It doesn't sound awkward when I say, oh, I'm going to Colorado to see Phish 3 times that I've never been to before. She gets it. So that
Yeah.
makes me more comfortable.
Yes, exactly. So everything I'm doing is trying to jump into that immediately and stop this whole sales cold calling, small talk, right? This sales process, which has financial advisors, just to give you a little perspective of what they do every day, very often are cold calling 50, 100 people every day, getting rejected because that's really annoying. They're calling people because of their occupation, right? They'll call a doctor because they think doctors have money. And when we see people as sales opportunities, a little humanity slips away, right?
A
It's
lot
like
of humanity
relationship.
slips away.
Yeah. Yeah, relationships turn into transactions. It's draining for both sides, right? So financial advisors are like exhausted, kind of going through this process. And it just feels a lot better to simply connect with people you genuinely enjoy spending time with, right? So I find by skipping that whole process, by just saying, "Hey, I'm a fan," and then like intentionally reaching out to other people that I see are also fans. I feel that friendship has a way of creating its own space for trust rather than kind of getting there through a sales process.
Sure.
And
And I
and
wanted to
then,
ask, do you see
yeah,
anything from your days as working in a suit and, more typical wealth management, and now you're working with a clientele of Phish fans, a heady clientele, should I call it? Do
yeah.
you see any different patterns or behavior patterns or different ways of communication, like to generalize one group to another?
Yeah, I do. I think that we're very good online, and I think this comes from the way that the way that we, Fish.net in the 90s, the way that we've all kind of jumped online to communicate with each other and check in on what the band was doing. We're all like really prepped well for online communication, whether that's through social media. Whereas in a more formal world, where you're trained really to use the phone, right? Get on the phone, call, so you're constantly on the phone, leaving messages, speaking to an assistant, or quite frankly, just bothering somebody in the middle of their day. So I really appreciate that a lot. So when I reach out to people, I very often get a response, and I'm immediately in a very human dialogue about like, hey, like, what's your story? What was your first show? It's just amazing. It's a pleasure.
And why Sandpiper? Are those your two favorite songs? Did you become a fan in 1999 or 1998?
I did become a fan in '98, but the reason why is two great songs, absolutely. But I figured Sandpiper, if you don't know who Fish is, it still is appropriate for a financial dude, right? Still sounds professional. So yeah, just not too much thought went into it, but I love it and I'm sticking with it.
And my initial thought when we started this conversation, when you reached out to me about wealth management not really being I hate to use the word heady because it immediately dates me, but not being like a typical Phish service, I forgot or I remembered very soon after Phish comes to Mexico every year, and that is the most
Yeah.
expensive Phish
Yeah.
experience that one could afford, at least that I'm aware of. I mean, you went to the Sphere, maybe they kind of match up in that sense, but also the Section 119. If you've ever looked at their clothing, like
Oh, absolutely.
$60 for a t-shirt. You kidding
Yeah.
me? So
Yeah.
maybe
And
we're growing. You mentioned we're getting older. So we do have the money and possibly the need to invest as opposed to just keep everything in a bank account and wait for tour announcements at the Deviac Schweiss.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you have me thinking too, like the word wealth itself carries a stigma to it that
It
might not
does.
be it might not be appropriate for me because I really do two things. I do financial planning, which is relevant for everybody, right? It's like sitting down, what do you have going on? Where do you want to be? And having a professional person put pen to paper and create a plan and hold you accountable to it, right? So you get there. So you mentioned Section 119. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the community that are starting businesses or want to start businesses. That's an area that I help out a lot. And you don't need to be like rich. In fact, you're usually not rich when you start a business, right? It's you mentioned Mexico, which is great. It's kind of like, you know what? Let's forget it. We're just going to go to Mexico, and then you go. Instead of that, it's like let's plan to go to Mexico next year, and here's how, right? So you bring up a really great point. A lot of what we do now, especially in this community, when we travel and we stay in hotels now instead of our cars, right? It's expensive. And a lot of financial decision making comes just shoot from the hip and it's not really well thought out. I try to have people plan things ahead of time and have some forethought. And it's necessary if you really want to kind of build a future that's gonna sustain you through the rest of your life.
So where can people find you? Listeners who are listening to this episode right now, maybe they either fell into money or they're not happy with their current arrangement with financial planning. Let's avoid the phrase wealth management because I agree
Hmm.
with you. It does have,
Yeah.
at least for me, that
Yeah.
connotation of the boring commercials during football games.
Yeah, totally.
Financial planning,
Absolutely.
where can they find Sandpiper?
Yeah, sandpiperwealth.com. I'll think through a different word there. Or my name, right? Ted Kanakaris, TEDD, right? Two D's. Kanakaris will see it in your podcast. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over social media in chat rooms all the time. So
Let's shift the conversation a little bit to something that's a
awesome.
little bit more utilitarian, something that if people aren't into financial planning, something that they probably are into. Let's talk a bit about beer.
Yes.
So when you reached out to me, you had a long list of different topics you'd like to touch on. And I like to say that I try to keep my podcast episodes roughly an hour to an hour, 15 minutes. So I said, we got to cut it down to a few. And you
Yep.
immediately wrote back and you said, I have a brewing club, or at least a social club focused around beer called Gotta Brew.
Yes.
Give everyone the rough outline of the Gotta Brew beer club or whatever you guys call it. I'm probably making it sound lamer and it's probably really cool.
Yeah. So this is another kind of community thing that I just think is fascinating, right? So after the whole suit and tie, whatever financial services firm thing, once I jumped out of that and I just started being myself and connecting with the community, I immediately started meeting people. And literally like the first week of my doing this, I met this guy, Ryan Stanley. He used to work with bands. He used to manage bands. He is an entrepreneur. He was a coach, and I was like, I could use a coach. Like my firm is literally making fun of me. So you're a Phish fan. You're a coach. I started working with him, and in a couple weeks, he reaches out to me and he says, "Hey, somebody wants to meet you. His name is Pete. He grew up with Trey. He's the Pete that's mentioned in Wilson. He's got some questions. He wants some help." And I was like, "Sure, I'm happy to help some of Trey's friends. Um, this is the community though. So, I met Pete, and then Pete's like, you should come into this beer club that we have. Tom Marshall's in it, and it's we get together once a month and we just go to a different brewery because we all love beer, and we play trivia, and we just, it's an excuse and an opportunity to stay connected and hang out. I was like, sure, I'll go to a brewery hang with Tom Marshall. My old colleagues are making fun of me. I'm like, all right, I'll go hang out with Tom and Pete and stuff. And so Ryan Stanley used to work with Tom years ago with Amphibian, and it's just a group of friends that are all from kind of New Jersey, and they like fish and beer, and it's just nothing. I don't think this was really planned. It came out of this guy Scott, who actually runs the trivia when we get together. Scott meets. This is the story as I remember. Scott meets Tom in an elevator randomly at MSG, right during show or after show. And Scott basically says to Tom, like, "Hey, I'm Scott. How can I send you beer?" And then Tom gives him his information. He's like, "Oh, here you go." And then they become friends, right? So it's like pretty random, funny story around beer there. Ryan already knows Tom for years, and the three of them are like, "Hey, why don't we start this like brewery hang, right? We love beer. Scott, maybe you could do trivia." And they just started and invited a handful of people in, and I was, I guess, right place at the right time and got invited into it.
Do you remember what beer it was? Like the first beer you had with the group or which
Yeah, the
brewery you
first
went to?
yeah, so the first one I went to was Carton in Red Bank, New Jersey. One of the manager of that brewery is in the group, this guy Dave.
And
Just like walked
so,
in and it's like, "Hey Tom," just
so is there any like membership? Is it by invitation only? How does that work?
yeah, it just kind of came out of those guys inviting a handful of people, and then I think we're at 15 people, and they were like, that's enough. It was like, this is a good hang. And so it wasn't formal. It's not really a membership kind of thing. We have an Instagram page, we have glasses, and Ryan got us shirts and stuff, and Ryan has a t-shirt company. So I guess we've made it into a little kind of club thing, but it's not formal where there's membership or anything.
And more recently, I understand you guys have collaborated with Lawson's Fine Liquids in Vermont, which just, this is not a paid advertisement, but I
No, not
love
at all.
Lawson's. I love Lawson's. Most people probably know them from their Sip of Sunshine IPA, which is the big yellow can, or if not, maybe the Hops a Lot IPA, which is the
Yep.
ocelot in the blue background with the red Fishman donuts. How did that come about? How did you guys get in touch with Lawson's and, moreover, collaborate with them for a beer?
Yeah, so I mean, Tom has a knack for meeting brewers.
I'm
His
shocked.
I know, right? It's like a big passion of his. So Sean and Tom met at a show at some point. Sean, obviously a fan with a beer named Hopslot, right? How can you not be? And yeah, I guess we just started doing this beer thing, and word gets around. Tom mentions it to Sean, and Sean goes, "Well, why don't you come up here and brew a beer with me, right? It's just for fun." And so we're like, "Yeah, sure." So everything's just kind of like jamming and improvise, right? Like Sean reaches out, and we're like, "Yeah, sure, we'll do it." And so we all just mobilized a couple weeks ago. We did this, and we went up to his brewery up in Vermont, just near like Sugarbush, if you're familiar with where that is. Just an awesome place, just a huge operation he has. And the beer, again, like not a paid ad, but no, seriously, like the beer is fantastic. And at the tap room, he has all sorts of kind of experimental beers that he's brewing, and it was just a great experience there. But he's also like Sean is a great guy. He is running a sustainable business. He's a B Corp, which is a very, very difficult certification to get for a sustainable, socially responsible business. I was reading his corporate responsibility book. It's like thick. He does a tremendous amount for Vermont. I think it was like $2.5 million he donated to over 400 non-for-profits. Just like
Wow.
I can't imagine coordinating money to go to 400 non-for-profits. He's just like a huge presence. So yeah, so we just went up there, we brewed a beer, and while we were just up there, we were just hanging out and talking, and it was like, well, what are you going to do with the beer when it's done? Like, are we going to come back? Like, we should probably come back and try it, right? And then it was like, oh yeah, look, we should. Like, maybe we could have like a little event. And I had, I know a mutual friend of ours, Matt Hoffman, reached out to me, and he was like, I'd be really interested to kind of write about, you guys and like what you guys are up to, because it's so out of the box. So I mentioned that to Tom and Sean as well. And then they're like, oh yeah, so like maybe we'll bring in like our publicist or our PR people or whatever. And it's just like it turned into like a formal collab where it's going to be on draft up there. And if it does well, he might can it. Who knows, right? So yeah, just kind of a couple of guys wanting to hang out at breweries, and now I guess we're in the beer business.
All right, Ted, thank you for all that about Sandpiper and also about Lawson's Fine Liquids. But let's get to know you as a Phish fan with the attendance
Yeah.
bias lightning round.
Attendance bias lightning round.
Ted, when was your first Phish show, and what do you remember about it?
Yeah, my first show was 8/8/98, Meriwether Post. There's one thing that really sticks out more than the show, actually, right? The show was a great show, right? But there was a girl in the parking lot who hugged me because it was my first Phish show. We always celebrate the noobs, right? And she's like, "Oh, tomorrow is the third anniversary of Jerry's death. They're gonna play a Grateful Dead song." And she said it with confidence, like she planned it herself. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And I was just having this whole Phish experience, the whole community, the whole economy behind it. It was like all new. I got to go to the next night, and I got to see Terrapin, and I was just like, "Wow, this is a magical community." So that girl, whoever you are, you're magical. Thanks for the hug. That was pretty incredible.
What was your most recent show, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, it was the last night of SPAC, the Reverse Tweezer Fest. It was unbelievable. I mean, these guys are playing at such an incredibly high level. I didn't know if I was just like blown away by the music or just dealing with immense gratitude that we're still doing this and that they're still playing incredibly well like this. It's just such a blessing.
It was an incredible show. Well, sometime soon, someone is going to ask if they can talk about it on this podcast, and
Yeah.
I'm going to have as much to say as the guest will. It really, there are certain high points in my show going career. This is right there. This is right at the top of most other shows I've been to that I consider great.
Yeah, just the whole section after Golden Age, I remember just being like, I can't believe this is happening. It was just like, it's just I think it's really unique that we have this situation where we have a band that's been together so long and in many ways are kind of improving. I mean, yeah, it's just amazing.
So this next question, we spent a good amount of time talking about beer. So this came to mind, and the question as it's written is, what is your favorite lower price point beer? So the reason I thought about this is because Lawson's, it's great, but it is not a lower price point, right? It is.
No, it is not.
Right. You're going to spend, but you get what you pay for. It's worth what it costs. But sometimes there's just room for Miller High Life. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were on vacation and we ended up in Rochester. I had to stop at the Genesee Brewery to enjoy a Jenny Cream Ale. So beers
Yeah.
like PBR, High Life, Cream Ale, what's your favorite if you just had like a 20 for a 12 pack?
So yeah, I would say my favorite taste wise is Miller High Life, actually. I worked for my last company was based in Milwaukee and I got to go out there a lot and I think it is the best tasting out of the lower price points. PBR almost killed me. I do have yeah, that one is I think I have taste of version for PBR at this point. My first beer was Peels. Have you ever heard of Peels?
I have not heard of Peels.
Yeah, so that was my first beer. It's a bit nostalgic. My friend Paul and I shared one. It took us 2 hours to drink it between gags every time we took a sip. So for nostalgia, that's my favorite beer for nostalgia, but not by taste.
My grandpa used to drink Ballantine Ale. Have you ever
Oh
had a
man.
Ballantine Ale?
No, I've heard of it though. Gosh, maybe we should do like a beer tasting and just get all low shelf beer. Since yeah.
The last person to vomit wins.
Yeah. Oh,
So switching
great
back to
question.
your switching back to your background and current job as a financial planner, follow me if you can, right? I'm an English teacher
Yes.
and the school year is coming up soon. So I deal a lot, I'm in middle school, so I deal a lot with symbolism and analogies.
Okay.
So, as a fan, were there any songs, any Phish songs that started out as unpopular or mocked, but you saw potential, so you liked it right away? Like you bought stock in it. Did you see
Huh.
if the Phish canon is a financial market, were there any songs that you bought low and then you invested
Mhm.
well, and now it's like one of the best songs? So like I think Soul Planet, it has the greatest return on investment in 3.0. It's like really cheesy,
Mm.
it's easy to make fun of, but constantly since it debuted, it has some of the best jams of the era. Do you see any other songs that way that had a inauspicious start but now is celebrated?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And Soul Planet, by the way, too, as a piano player, is it's in the key of B. So cheesy or not, I mean, every time Paige takes off on that, B is not an easy key to play at all, right? Every time Paige takes off on that, I'm always in awe. So stop making fun of it. It's hard to play. Um, that's really tough. There there is a song that I love, and it's a very basic dad rock song that I think they've only played once. And I liked it when they played it. I don't know if anybody's ever made fun of it. I don't know why they've only played it once, if maybe twice. But it's a due to life song called "Can't Always Listen." They played it at MSG during one of the New Year's runs. The lyrics
It
"Can't
was right
always
in the
listen
middle
to."
of Mike's Groove, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's used in Hands on a Hard Body, Trey's musical.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Ah, there you go. So I guess I'm a Broadway guy. I like this song because it's just like a dad rock song and it's fun, but also just kind of going through like a transition into this out of box financial planning fish thing. When people are like, that's dumb, that's stupid, I would just listen to that song like it was like my anthem. Like, you can't listen to what people say. Like, just be you, right? I think if we're talking stocks, they played it once. If they play it twice, it's 100% return on investment. I think there's some power and what is it? It's like a self-help song for me, right? So for those reasons, that's my choice.
And finally, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a fish show?
Oh gosh, what's not weird? There was a show. I think it was either at Hartford. I think it was Hartford. And I'm walking back down to the front of the lawn. I got a beer, kind of thing. It's dark. They started, so I'm like late to get back to the second set. And like you find your way. It's dark. You find your way, and then you find a little opening. And you're like, all right, this is where I'm gonna hang out and dance, right? And as soon as I get there, I just feel the presence of the guy next to me. So he's this tall, 6'5" kind of tall dude, and I just turn and he's looking at me, just like dagger eyes. And without skipping a beat, he goes, "Do you want to pet my owl?" And I was just like, really, yeah, like taken back. And I looked down, and there was this taxidermy, real looking owl with like feathers wearing a glow stick on its neck. my cousin and I, like my cousin was with me. We still to this day just like randomly will say like, "Do you want to pet my owl?" Just weird, random. That's what I love about Phish, by the way. Is just, the more weird and random it is, and the more I love the community. But that I'd say that's probably as weird as it gets.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode.
When was this show played?
So you chose Phish's version of 2001 from December 29th, 98, Phish's holiday run in 1998. For me, 1998 as a calendar year, I think is underrated. I think it's true for the holiday run inclusive. I have a lot of attendance bias for this one as well, because my first show was literally 1 year earlier, December 29th, 97. And then during the 1998 calendar year, I just dove headfirst into everything Phish. There was nothing that could escape me. I had to listen to everything, learn every lyric, find out every songwriter, everything that, like the history of every venue, anything that could be learned. 1998 was the calendar year where I soaked it all up. So when they came around back to Madison Square Garden, I put in for the Phish tickets by mail, all 4 nights. I got 3. I got December 28th, 29th, and 30th. I did not get New Year's tickets, and I was not savvy enough to really know how to work the system or find people. I wasn't in touch with a lot of other Phish fans. I was only 16, so I didn't really know as much from others, like how to, like I would today, for example, how to find tickets or have the tickets try and come to me. But I do think that this holiday run, looking in retrospect, was a turning point for Phish. And it's not really thought of that often, but I think it was a turning point professionally, maybe musically, but certainly in terms of their standing in the professional music world and even within their own little business, their own little basis. So this year's holiday run of 1998 was the 28th to the 31st at Madison Square Garden. More recent fans may not see anything notable or strange about that, but I'd have to double check this. And if anyone out there knows, you could please let me know, get in touch over social media. I do believe that this was the first holiday run in one venue over 4 nights. I think it was also the first one that took place exclusively at Madison Square Garden, because in 97, they played 3 nights at the Garden, but they had one show in Maryland before the 3 consecutive nights at MSG.
Been part of history too on top of that, and it just makes me feel better about having been there. That was a really just magic time. And I think like our history is pretty similar. And so 98 for me was like when I really jumped in. And being from Long Island, there was a store, Prime Cuts, which I know you've had the owners on your store. That was an institution for us, and I would just go into that store with all of my money. And this is not financial advice, but I would like spend all my money on like 98, like the entire, so it's just a real important year, nostalgic year for me. But I agree with you. It was pivotal for them too.
And to sell out Madison Square Garden 4 nights in a row, that's big for any band.
Oh my gosh. I mean, who else?
Right? Especially a band that never had a radio hit. I mean, this has all been said by a trillion different outlets and different publications, but back in the late 90s, it was even different, before YouTube, social media, any of that, just based on their own power. And also, something else about this holiday run, the 98 one, I'll stick by this, even though I said this once before on the podcast, and someone either reached out to me or left it in a review, I can't remember, that this holiday run did not have a traditional gag, at least as we've come to expect it in the 2010s. Like the band opened the New Year's Eve show with 1999 by Prince, appropriately. There were costumed dancers throughout the run. There were people dressed as like fairies and worms and
Exactly.
On New Year's Eve, the band gave out glow sticks, which created this enormous glowworm, which I don't know if those are still around, but it was pretty incredible to see. But unless you take that kind of loose interpretation of it being, I don't know, worms in the garden, I guess, there wasn't really a strong
Yeah.
narrative or connective theme. Like,
I agree. I totally agree that this is debated. I was just talking about this with somebody the other day because I mentioned the only New Year's I've ever been to, the only New Year's Eve show is MSG in '98, and they asked what was the gag, and I said there wasn't any. I totally agree with you.
yeah, so it's a big changing point, even though it's not heralded musically as much, even though the 28th had this incredible Carini into Wolfman's Brother.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
29th had an extremely long, I'm sorry, the 30th had this extremely long first set that ended with a Chef's Kiss Reba. And the
Mhm.
1999 that opened New Year's Eve should be widely renowned. So let's dive into the 2001. It's the
Yes.
third song of a 5-song second set. This is one of my favorite shows ever, one of my favorite sets ever,
Yeah.
because at Prime Cuts, when I got this show, this was a big deal because number one, it was on CD, which was
Oh, I didn't
hugely
have it on
different.
CD.
I
Wow.
their bread and butter were tapes,
Tapes.
but
Yep.
this was a double disc CD, which I could picture it right now. It was a gold CD, and it was
Uh,
double disc, and it was a soundboard recording,
oh man. Phew. To have a soundboard recording back then, right? Oh man.
especially from the late 90s, because the
Yeah.
tape recordings, the audience recordings of a lot of shows in 98, 99, 2000 weren't very good.
No, no.
So
Tough.
this 2001 is the third song of a 5-song second set. It should be noted that 4 out of the 5 songs in this set are on the Phish.net jam charts. So if you've never heard this show, don't exclude the first set, but certainly go out and try and
Oh,
listen to the whole show.
yeah, definitely do that. Yeah. They opened with rock and roll too. I remember it
Yes.
was just like right out of the gate, just high energy blasting you in the face. It was great. It was such a great show.
But the first 2 songs of the set were Free, a really good version, and Limb by Limb, an outstanding version.
Mhm.
So this 2001 is right in the heart of the show. I remember loving this show as it was being played and just listening to it endlessly afterward. This is one of the shows that's in my DNA. Like, I remember it being such a big deal. This 2001, the beginning of it is different from any other version that I'm aware of. So if anyone else listens
Yeah.
to this and then can compare it to a different version of 2001 again, reach out, social media, let me know. It immediately begins with Mike playing with a little kind of back and forth riff that sounds like it could be the beginning of
Hmm.
Piper, right? If I went in here blind, that's what I would
Yep.
think they were going to go into. But it's really kind of the leftovers of Limb by Limb from the jam.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of percolating and just sitting there. And yeah, it reminds me of something like maybe like Miles Davis from like his Bitches Brew era, just this kind of electronic, just bubbling. And, yeah, absolutely.
And it seems to come out of thin air. A lot of people remember 98 as the summer of covers, and they also continue that into the fall. But something that's kind of ignored, or at least not as widely acknowledged about 1998, was it was kind of moving away from the 97 funk and into the 99 ambience.
Exactly. Exactly right. This is a flashpoint 2001. so appropriate that it's during the New Year's run leading into 99 because I was personally obsessed with the 97, 98, 2001s that started with the long front, very tight, very funky. The band just kind of meandering, but nothing that like really rocked. It wasn't really this like big rock opera opening kind of thing. This was totally different, and you're absolutely right. It led into a more ambient Phish going into 99. It's exactly why I picked this song to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Is that why you have attendance bias?
Yeah, probably. Yes.
Yeah, and so once you get past that first kind of mic going like doo doo, like he kind of runs up the neck of his bass. Like things get a little spicy with him at about a minute, and Fishman then joins in with an intricate rhythm on his hi-hat. And then about a minute later, at about 2:25, I wrote down as a timestamp, Fishman kind of makes it a little bit more intense, and Mike then goes into a repetitive melody, like a do 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 do, like very, I don't know, very
hypnotic.
Ambient. Yeah, hypnotic. That's the word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember too, I was sitting by Page, I was on the side sitting by Page. I vividly just remember the fog just kind of filling MSG, and it was hypnotic. It was, yeah.
The whole thing is hypnotic.
The whole thing is on the piano, you call it like a glissando. It was just like riding up the frets. I don't know how the words for it, but yeah, they were hypnotizing us, I think.
It almost sounds like they're hypnotizing themselves, like they're kind of surrendering. I know surrendering to the flow, but really to just inspiration in the moment. But it still holds together. To me, this sounds like something that would be like on the Sicket disc.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
And then it slips into 2001 at about 5 minutes. The song proper begins with Fishman's kickoff to the very familiar drum beat, but the band doesn't quiet down just for Fishman. There's a lot of distortion and extended guitar riffs over the drum beat as it starts. This is when 2001, you mentioned, its intro could be really extended, like David Bowie's intro or, Pour One Out for Piper's introduction.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it did. It had this kind of this hangover of the ambient dissonance that happened before, and it just kind of carried through the entire front end of 2001. So it was like this like hypnotic drone just stayed there. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's bringing back a lot of memories.
It's great. That's what this podcast is for.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Man,
And then Trey
time
and
flies.
Page break into the trademark ambient funk at about
Yep.
7 minutes. Now we're in 2001, right? That first 5 minute introduction is over. And again, whatever Trey is doing with his guitar at about 7 minutes is one of my favorite parts of his style that year in 1998. It almost sounds like he's playing backwards, but he's not. It always holds together. There's this big explosive buildup with the band working as a collective unit at about 8 minutes. And then by 8 minutes and 45 seconds, Trey puts out very clear cross-eyed and painless teases.
Oh yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, he was the whole front part of that for me. He was playing this cadence, this like rock cadence. He just like stepped out and just this distorted rock and roll cadence, and it was very repetitive. To me, it felt like almost like a call to arms alarm that was like, "Hey, I have a lot of energy that I'm about to let out. This is not going to be your normal 2001." And I just remember just being like, just overwhelmed with just. It was so powerful. And then, yeah, you're right. He did that cross-eyed and painless tease too, which again, another cadence, another kind of repetitive cadence, totally different than the traditional 97, 98, 2001s where he's playing a lot of notes, right? So yeah, I remember. Oh man,
did you recognize cross-eyed and painless in the moment? Do you remember?
No,
I know I didn't.
In the moment, I was too much of a noob to know. But
Same.
Yep, absolutely.
And the first chorus, those of you listening at home, the first chorus of 2001 begins at 10 minutes. So we're 10 minutes into the track before, if you've never seen or listened to Phish before, you would know this song, but you wouldn't until you've been listening to it already for 10 minutes. And Trey is soloing in between the choruses, kind of trading licks with Page. So this is one that's led by Trey and Page. And you bring up Page a lot, especially as a pianist. He's a bit harder to discern for me, at least, even on a soundboard.
Huh. I guess I'm just so obsessed with him that maybe, yeah, I don't know. I always feel like I could hear him pretty clearly. It helps being there to watch what he's doing too.
That's true. And something that's great about Phish, you could always listen to it. This show, however many years, 25 years or so, you could always find more to dig into on one track, however many times I've listened to it. And my favorite part of this whole track is at 12 minutes, there's just this huge spontaneous crowd roar. Just the way I took it, it's just out of recognition of how locked in everything is, the crowd and the music.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, Trey was kind of announcing in the beginning of that this is, I've got a lot of energy kind of feel. And just the connection that we always have at these shows, we fed off of that. I remember it was just high energy and excitement and joy. And yeah, man, like the hair on my neck is standing up just remembering, just everything that was happening at that moment. I love those moments too. It's like Trey was letting out a lot of energy and he's just inspiring everybody to play at that level. And then we give it back. I love those moments at Phish shows. I think we all live for those moments.
And you could feel it in this recording.
Oh, man.
Even though it's a soundboard, you could feel it wash over you when the crowd at 12 minutes. And then there's straight up rock and roll at about 14 minutes. And they go into the last chorus. And then the song ends, or at least the track ends, with kind of this mishmash of cymbal washes and feedback. I don't know about how smooth it is, but it does kind of abruptly turn into a beautifully and perfectly placed Boogie on Reggae Woman, which I believe is the shortest track of the set.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a great place to land after just getting your face bashed in.
Any other fun memories from this show?
I remember the rock and roll opener. I remember just being excited. New Year's run, MSG. I just remember that rock and roll setting the stage for a really, really powerful show. And I love that song so much. I know that's not the song we're talking about, but I'm so glad that they have that in their repertoire as well. It's just such a great rock anthem for us. So.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for coming on to Attendance Bias
today.
Today.
Thank you. This is great.
It was so fun to tell about your company, Sandpiper Wealth, to talk about the Gotta Jabrew Club. One more time before we cut out of here, how can people find you for professional services?
So my website is sandpiperwealth.com. And I'll also mention too, on Instagram, follow at gotta_Jabrew, Jibrew. Ryan Stanley does a great job posting everything that we're up to. And maybe there'll be an event in Vermont if you guys want to come and try some of our beer. Hopefully it tastes good.
And that's it for today's conversation with Ted. But we got to make sure we got everything just right because there were a few mistakes here and there. So let's go back and make sure we get all the corrections in.
Attendance bias fact check.
First, I brutally butchered the name of Phish's old newsletter by calling it the Doviak Schweiss. I think I got my consonants mixed up because it's really called the Doniak Schweiss. At least that's how I've always pronounced it. It's one letter, but it sounds like it made a world of difference when I said it during the conversation. When discussing the origins of Gotta Jabrew, Ted mentions Trey's childhood friend Pete, who is mentioned in the song Wilson. He is speaking of Pete Catone of the lyric Raj and Pete the Same. Ted also name-checks the band Amphibian. Amphibian was a musical project fronted by Phish lyricist Tom Marshall that had a rotating lineup of musicians since the year 2000. They have 2 albums available, and if you check out their bio on Wikipedia, there is a link to their still active MySpace page. Ted's first show, August 8th, 1998 at Merriweather Post Pavilion is a bona fide classic. In addition to the psychic fan Ted met, who sticks out in his memory, the show also contained the Phish debut of Sweet Jane to close the first set, a notable version of 2001, a run-through of Tila, Fishman singing Sexual Healing, and then an encore of the Beastie Boys' Sabotage, which came out of nowhere and caused a mosh pit to form in the front. The song Can't Always Listen has been played twice by Phish. Ted was right. It was co-written with The Dude of Life, and it debuted on December 30th, 2015 at MSG. But it was also played on August 30th, 2019 at Dick's. However, I was way off in my 2 comments about the song. Can't Always Listen was not played in a Mike's Groove at Madison Square Garden. Instead, it was sandwiched right in the middle of a version of Ghost. Also, it has nothing to do with Hands on a Hard Body, the musical. I was confusing the song with Burn That Bridge, which was in the musical, and played just once on New Year's Eve 2010 at MSG. I guess Ted may not be a Broadway guy after all, and I gotta check my stats all the time. Ted mentions that being from Long Island, he went to the store Prime Cuts to get tapes and to learn more about Phish. If you want to hear more about Prime Cuts, check out the Attendance Bias episode that aired on October 20th, 2021. Finally, although I do describe the recording of this show from Prime Cuts as a soundboard, the version from Phish.in that is used on this episode is a matrix from 3 different sources. Pristine. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Ted for joining me today, Phish.net for their help with the fact check, Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode, and the Mockingbird Foundation for everything they do to help with children's music education. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by visiting www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donating anything you can. You can also follow Attendance Bias on social media. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.